Every blog in 2026 says Playwright won and Puppeteer is legacy. But that take comes mainly from the testing crowd. And since we run millions of sessions across way more use cases than just testing, we wanted to shed some light from our perspective. And don't get me wrong, generally, yeah, Playwright is the best option for most people today who are starting from scratch. But if you commit to it now without watching this video first, you might lock yourself out of things only Puppeteer can do. So stick around and you'll know which library fits which job best and the one problem neither of them solves. Honestly, Playwright really earned its spot as the best automation library out there. First of all, it's cross-browser, so its API lets you drive Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit all the same way. Whereas Puppeteer only added Firefox recently through WebDriver BiDi, and it still doesn't support WebKit at all. On top of that, it runs in JavaScript, Python, Java, and .NET, so your team isn't forced into Node or unmaintained libraries just to use it. You can see that reflect on the adoption numbers too, because Playwright's download have blown past Puppeteer's and that gap just keeps widening. And some things are just simply easier to do. Here's a concrete example of the difference when you download a file on a remote browser using both libraries. In Playwright, downloading a file is just a few lines. You listen for the download event, you save it, and you're done. But in Puppeteer, there's no download abstraction at all. So you end up rebuilding one over raw CDP, which means intercepting the responses, streaming the bytes back to yourself, and then aborting the request, which is a lot more code for the same result. And when it comes to AI agents, the ecosystem mostly leans towards Playwright as well, since it ships a first-party MCP server and most of the big agent frameworks default to it. That said, its MCP isn't perfect either, because its agents still get stuck on protected sites or things that have bot detection. And that's actually where our own browserless MCP comes in, so give it a shot, because it has stealth and capture solving built right in. We have video tutorials on that if you're interested, so consider subscribing if it's the type of thing you're interested in learning more about. So bottom line, if you're starting a new test suite in 2026, Playwright really is the way to go. There's no question about it. So with all that said, you think Puppeteer is basically done, and that's exactly what most articles will tell you today. But that's just not true, because it still ships roughly every month, and it tracks every new Chrome release. It even picked up stable Firefox support through WebDriver BiDi, which is the new standardized automation protocol, so it's clearly still moving forward. Puppeteer is still the workhorse for so much of the scraping world. It's mainly Chrome-focused automation, data extraction, PDF, and screenshot pipelines. A huge share of the traffic we see is exactly that, and they're still running happily on Puppeteer with no reason to switch. So let's talk a little bit more about where Puppeteer pulls ahead. The clearest example is a method called disconnect, which lets you detach from a browser without actually closing it. Playwright doesn't have that at all. All it has is close, which tears everything down on the way out, and people have been asking for disconnects since 2021 with no luck to this day. So to the Playwright team, if you're watching this, please support this feature, please. And on browserless, that one method is what makes our standard sessions work. You connect to a browser, do your work, and then tell the browser to stay alive, and then you can disconnect. The browser is just chilling on the server waiting for you to reconnect. And once you do, it's sitting there with your cookies, your local storage, and the page exactly where you left it. So you can log in once and reuse that session across completely separate connections, which is huge for anything behind a login that you want to keep open. Now, if you're on Playwright, it doesn't mean you can't do that. You're not totally stuck. We have approaches such as persisting state or authenticated profiles that get you close. The difference with that is that the browser does close between each execution, and we just save your session data and load it back into the next browser session. So it's different mechanics but a similar result, although some sites have a hard time persisting through this method depending on their authentication rules. Now, if you do run Playwright against remote browsers like ours, there's something most people don't realize pretty quickly, which is that you actually have two different ways to connect, and it's important that you think through which one you pick. The first one is the connect method, which uses Playwright's own native protocol, and it's great because you get features like request interception, and you get Firefox and WebKit, and it has lower overhead, so it's fast. The catch is that it's tightly version coupled, so the protocol changes between Playwright releases, and your client version has to match what the server is running, unlike Connect over CDP, which stays generally compatible even when versions move around. There's also a gotcha worth mentioning, which is that on this native connection, some of our features like stealth and capture solving just get silently ignored and won't throw an error. They simply quietly do nothing. The second option is Connect over CDP. It's Chromium only and it can be a little slower since Playwright gets pretty chatty over the protocol. But in exchange, it's what actually unlocks the full feature set that we offer at Browserless. So a bunch of our features start working, like capture solving extensions and session recordings to name a few. And it's also the only way a Playwright user can even reach those reconnect commands like authenticated profiles or persistent sessions that we mentioned earlier. So if you want the full set of Browserless features, Connect over CDP is the way to go. Okay, so we spent this whole video weighing Playwright against Puppeteer, but here's the thing. There's one problem where the library you pick barely matters at all. The industry spent years migrating from Puppeteer to Playwright, and bot detection systems didn't care even a little bit, because the library was never really the thing they were detecting. Both of them drive the browser through automation protocols, and those protocols leave little breadcrumbs behind that the detection scripts can pick up on, no matter which library opened the connection. For a while, the community's answer was the stealth plugins. First Puppeteer Extra and its stealth plugin, then Playwright Extra ported the same approach over to Playwright. But both of those have gone pretty stale, with patches written for detection tricks from several Chrome versions ago, while the anti-bot companies just kept improving their detection. And the deeper lesson here is that patching JavaScript properties one by one stopped being enough a long time ago, because modern detection looks at the protocol, the fingerprint, and your behavioral all together. Now at Browserless, we do have stealth features built right into the platform that handle a lot of this for both libraries, like our stealth routes, which work at the infrastructure level, and built-in residential proxies, to name a couple. But the honest truth is that on the hardest sites, even those might not be enough. And at that point, we found that we had to tackle this from a completely different angle. So instead of patching all these libraries dead giveaways, we built our own stealth approach that doesn't lean on either library at all. Nothing's injected, so there are no automation breadcrumbs left behind for a site to find. And we know a lot of you already have a working Puppeteer or Playwright script, and you're probably thinking what a hassle it'll be to migrate your code. But don't worry, because we built our product with our customers in mind. So once you're past detection, you can still plug in your existing code with the library of your choice and finish the job. I'll drop a link in the description to our new stealth tools so you can check them out. So to bring it all together, here's what we learned in a nutshell. If you're building tests, go with Playwright. It's the better tool for that job by far. If you're doing Chromium only automation or have scraping pipelines, or your browser literally needs to be kept alive so you can reconnect to it later, Puppeteer is far from legacy and still the right call. And if you're scraping protected sites, there's no real difference in which library you use because none of them completely solve it. So that's the honest take from our side of things, and if it helped, please consider subscribing. The docs on our stealthy approaches are linked below in the description, and we've got plenty videos on session management, captcha solving, and stealth approaches if you want to dig deeper. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you on the next one.